I would just say that that's the reason why we're here this morning. I think the importance of what has happened at the University of Virginia is that this can happen to another institution here in Virginia if we stand quiet and if we don't make the point that we will not stand idly by while this has occurred. What I will say is that I think that what you have heard from Leader Serville about taking a look at the construct of our Board of Visitors and who is allowed to assume those positions prior to the confirmation of the General Assembly is critically important. We typically have seen these appointments from the governor, and we wait a period of time before we actually take them up, and that is critical. When you look at the boards of Norfolk State University and Virginia State University, they are majority Yonkin appointed at this time, and so we are deeply concerned, and that is why we're here today to say that we won't just allow for this type of action to occur to Virginia public institutions, because no institution will be safe if this is the precedent that is set.
Thanks, Senator Aird. And Lauren, thank you for your question. I outlined a couple ways and Senator Aird just re-highlighted some of the ways that we could try to address this. I think there's a couple other things that are important to note. First of all, the governor has now appointed a majority of the members of all these boards because they get appointed in 4-year chunks. And one of the things we could look at is whether or not we could restructure boards. First of all, I just want to make clear that the Code of Virginia makes clear that these universities are under the control of the General Assembly, not the governor. The governor has been telling his board members that he's been appointing that they're loyal to him and that they need to do what he say, even though Virginia law specifically says in the governing statute for each separate individual college, they're subject to the control of the General Assembly. And when we come back in January, we can rewrite the law. We can change the structure of these boards. We can add people. We can subtract people. We can delete positions. As long as the governor goes along. Would like to note that Abigail Spanberger is an alumni of the University of Virginia. She's put out a statement. She's deeply disturbed by what's happened. And so I think we need to look very carefully at university governance. I think it's also important to note that with regard to some of these boards, for example, UVA in particular, there are currently 5 vacancies. We rejected Cuccinelli 2 weeks ago. There are 4 people currently pending before us, which makes 5. If we were to reject those 5 people, and our next governor, which I hope to be Governor Spanberger, picks 4 more people 12 months from now, it would be a different majority, ideological majority on that board starting 11 months from now. George Mason currently has 6 vacancies. There was 4 more that were just given to us out of their 16 seats. If the 4 people currently pending are rejected, or the 6 people pending are rejected, that would leave 10 vacancies on that 16-member board. So there are steps out there that are available to us in the short term and in the long term to sort of reform governance and try and get control of the situation in some of these institutions.
Thank you, Senator Serville. Next, we will hear from Nathaniel Klein. If you can unmute yourself and tell us who you are with.
Good morning. My name is Nathaniel Klein. I'm a reporter with the Virginia Mercury. Have any of the members of the caucus learned of any similar incidents with other institutional leaders in Virginia?
Nathaniel, I know we've received reports that that there have been some investigations at a couple other universities by the Trump administration, whether it's looking into anti-Semitism or these similar issues. What really deeply disturbs me about this whole thing is it appears to me that the Youngkin administration coordinated this with the Trump administration as a means to get a president removed who was under contract for another few years. I don't view this as being something that just sort of rose up and happened when Trump got elected. I think it was a deliberately coordinated, specifically planned out way to remove somebody from an institution that a lot of people with a lot of money didn't like. And we have a couple other schools where the Trump administration seems to have taken an unusual interest. And we're going to do everything we can to protect those schools from any kind of influence from the Trump administration.
I completely agree with what Senator Serville has just said, that this has been a coordinated effort to weaponize boards across the Commonwealth. And you can see it in the appointments that have been made to these boards from the very beginning of the Youngkin administration. And it has not been an effort to try to, at the very least, appoint people who understood governance at these institutions of higher education. That was never the point. It was always the point to try to attack the presidents and undermine what was going on at these institutions. It was never an effort to try to understand education or higher education. It was always an effort to try to undermine academic freedom and undermine what was going on at that institution. Never an effort to try to understand governance or what board governance was about, but to completely weaponize the boards.
Okay, thank you so much for that answer, Senator Locke. Next, we will hear from Ford McCracken. If you can please unmute your mic and let us know who you're with.
Hi there, I'm Ford McCracken with the Cavalier Daily, the student paper at UVA. And my question is probably mainly for Senator Servell, but if the UVA board does install a new president at the university who is more loyal to the Youngkin and Trump agenda and ideology, and then makes significant reform to the university, would a hypothetical Democratic governor, if that is Governor or Representative Spanberger, and the Democratic Senate take action to remove that president if it broke with the caucus ideologically?
Thanks, Tyler. And it's good to get a question from the Cav Daily. My daughter, as you know, was the editor-in-chief about 3 years ago, and you guys do excellent work there. And I know everybody there is really concerned. First of all, I think it's important to remember that the governor, as we learned with Bert Ellis just about 2 months ago, the governor retains the authority to remove anybody from the Board of Visitors if they engage in malfeasance or incompetence. And that means if they don't follow the law. We already have Ken Cuccinelli announcing that he's not going to follow the law and continue to try to take his seat, notwithstanding the fact that we've rejected him, which is why Senator Lucas and 8 members of our Privileges and Elections Committee had to file a lawsuit to make sure the rule of law is honored in the Commonwealth. So, first of all, if the rector at the university continues to recognize people who we've rejected, I believe that would constitute malfeasance and incompetence and be a basis for removal by the next governor if that governor so chooses. So, first of all, I just think everybody needs to remember that's on the table. Secondly, as I pointed out to you, Tyler, a minute ago, between the 5 people that we currently have the Cuccinelli vacancy, the governor just put 4 people on. There's going to be 4 new people appointed by the next governor next June. It will be a different ideological majority at the University of Virginia next July 1. And I think it's very important that that the Board of Visitors do not act rashly, do not try to do something to bind the future board, because this current majority is only going to be in place for about 11 months. And they should not do anything that I think binds the university to any kind of long-term commitment to anything, because they're not going to be in power very long. And if they try to act and install somebody immediately, I think the Senate of Virginia would probably view that as an attempt to undermine legislative control of the body and the future governor's authority at that institution. So I really hope they don't act. I hope they don't install a new president anytime soon. What's happened is tragic, and that's what I think about it.
Thank you so much, Ford, for that question. Next, we will hear from Robert Morris. If you could please unmute your mic and let us know who you were with.
Yes, ma'am. I'm with the cadet. I have a 2-part question pertaining to the Board of Visitors and college presidents overall. The first one is you've called on and you may have partially answered this, but you've called on the 14 Board of Visitors and college presidents to resist what you describe as a federal overreach under President Trump, and encourage them to not comply with the executive orders 14151, 14173, and the Department of Education Dear Colleagues letter on enforcing DEI programs or eliminating DEI programs, as Mr. Ryan did at UVA and Major General Wings did at VMI. If the president boards will